attract a lot of birds and other animals. I'll list some of the best native plants for your home garden, list some of the best native and non-native plant species for hummingbirds, talk about some of the best garden practices for wildlife. I'll talk a bit about the invasive plants to avoid, and at the end I'll give some reference books that you can copy down. So when I was doing some research for this talk, I came across this wonderful quality of life study that was done in Europe in 2020. And the main conclusion of this study, or this was a part of the grand study, was that birds increase human happiness. And they found, and I don't know how they came to this conclusion, but they found that adding 10% more bird species to a vicinity increases the life satisfaction of Europeans at least as much as a comparable increase in income. I thought that was fascinating. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but I mean, it's like you were to go to your boss and say, ask for a 10% raise in pay, and he said, well, I can't afford that, but I'm going to increase the number of birds in your vicinity, and that should make you just as happy. But when I thought about it, increasing the variety of birds means that that extra 10% would probably be like the rarer birds that any person would see in any region. And I think when any of us see those rarer birds, we do get excited, and we do come home with a lift, and I think it in a certain way it does make you as happy as a raise in pay does. So the study concluded that nature conservation thus constitutes an investment in human well-being. So I think we can all agree on that. And so I came up with some equations from this study. The first one is that birds equal happiness. And I think everybody in this group would be on board with that. More birds then should equal more happiness. How do you get more birds? Well, if you provide more food and shelter, you get more birds, and then you get more happiness. And if you carry that thought further, the more diversity of plants or diversity of food equals more diversity of birds. And the more diversity of birds and animals is what is really meant by biodiversity. Biodiversity is the number of species, animals, birds, fungi, that occur in any particular area. And the places that have the greatest biodiversity, has been found, occur where two ecosystems come together and create almost a third ecosystem in the edge between them. So for example, in the picture on the left, what's sort of a field goes into a forest, and in between the two, there's a shrub ecosystem. In the photo on the right, you have a forest with a pond, and in between the two, you have sort of a marsh or a bog ecosystem. So you're going to have species that prefer ponds, bogs, and forests in that area. So if you think about how you could increase the number of species in your garden or your backyard or your property, you want to think about creating the greatest number of edges or habitats in your property in terms of space. And you should also think about space starting from the ground going up. So when you're planning your garden to maximize the number of bird species, you want to think about layers of vegetation. So for example, in this illustration, you'll see that, well, if you go across from the left to the right, the tallest trees look like they're probably a big leaf maple, maybe a Douglas fir is the tallest tree, then probably a red cedar, and then maybe a western hemlock on the right. And there are, if you follow the bird species on the left, you can see that flycatchers, crossbills, swallows, band-tailed pigeons, siskins seem to occupy the highest reaches of the tallest trees. And then if you come down a bit, then you're in the layer where you'd most likely find owls, nuthatches, jays, kinglets, woodpeckers, chickadees. And you go further down, and hummingbirds, you're down to the more or less the human level, goldfinches, juncos, bush tits, and then further down again, you're almost on the ground, and you've got a whole other set of species there. So if you're trying to attract any of these species on the left, you should be thinking about what layers you need to create on your property to attract those birds. So if I'm going to work on my ideal property, I'm definitely going to want to include some Douglas firs that are the strongest, tallest trees in our area, and provide cones and seeds to a lot of birds and small mammals. Grand firs are also excellent conifers for wildlife, and western hemlocks as well. I haven't included western red cedars here just because they seem to be quite stressed right now on the coast. So I probably wouldn't plant them if I were going to create my ideal garden. If they were there, I would certainly leave them. If I only had space for one native conifer, I would probably plant a shore pine. They are very versatile in terms of the soil conditions they will grow in. I've seen them in bogs, I've seen them growing out of pure sand, I've seen them growing out of rock on the shore. The only thing they really need is full sunlight, and they don't get too tall. So if you have only a small property, I would really recommend you think about planting a shore pine. They always have a lot of character. I find they don't grow just straight up like a Christmas tree. I think it is important to have conifers in your yard because they help to break the wind. Birds roost in them at night and take shelter in storms. So they really are useful. Two of the taller deciduous trees we have in this area are big leaf maple and red alder, so I'd probably want to include them. Big leaf maple, I don't know if you've ever noticed the flowers on those, but when the flowers come out in spring, bees will abandon every other flower in the neighborhood and go to the big leaf maple flowers. They seem to be full of nectar and pollen, and it's amazing the sort of insects that you see in them. Red alders may not be everybody's first choice for a tree, but they really are important in our ecosystems because the leaves are eaten by so many insects in their larval stage. And of course, those caterpillars become food to birds, especially nestlings. So this is something I just wanted to stress. A lot of people, when they go to the garden center to buy plants for their garden, think about broadleaf evergreens, which are not really useful for the wildlife that we have here on the coast. deciduous, even non-native deciduous shrubs are better in terms of feeding insects and thereby feeding birds. So the next layer in my garden would be the lower canopy layer, and in most Pacific Northwest forests, that layer is occupied by vine maples, which are quite common in Vancouver, North Shore, Fraser Valley, but not on the Sunshine Coast, which bothers me. I found vine maples growing in Squamish, but they don't seem to have made it around Howe Sound to the Sunshine Coast, and yet they do really well here. So in my plantings at the Botanical Garden, I've included a lot of vine maples, and they create a nice, they give a nice sort of airy feeling to the coniferous forest, and provide that sort of middle layer in the forest that birds like to occupy. And they also have it's the flowers on the left here. They also have flowers that are appealing to pollinating insects, and then of course they have the maple seeds that are eaten by birds. So another sort of understory plant, that tree that used to be quite common on the Sunshine Coast, is the cascara. And these were greatly over harvested for their bark years ago, and are just now making a comeback. It's a very attractive, I think, smallish tree that has a lot of appeal to birds. You can see the hummingbirds go for the small creamy yellow flowers in the spring, and robins and band-tailed pigeons and all sorts of other birds eat the black berries in the fall. And the tree goes a beautiful sort of golden yellow in the fall, which is really appealing. So we should all know the Pacific dogwood. We may not be too aware of them during the parts of the year when they're not in flower, but when they are in flower, you see them driving along the highway, sort of the branches jutting out from the conifers. And in the late summer, you will sometimes notice the large clusters of red berries or individual seeds in a sort of a ball that they're pulled apart by a lot of different birds. Small tree that is also quite versatile. It grows in bogs, along streams, even in rocky places, is the Pacific crabapple. It gets about the size of a domestic apple, I would say. Has fragrant white flowers in the spring. These small relative to domestic crab apples appear in late summer, and hang on usually into the fall until they soften a bit, and then the birds go for them. Another tree that I have not found on the Sunshine Coast, but which is common in the Fraser Valley and on Vancouver Island, is the black hawthorn. It gets maybe 15 feet high and 15 feet wide, covered in white blooms in the spring, and reddish black fruit in the fall. I spent a lot of December and January in Victoria, where there are a lot of black hawthorns. And after going through the winter, the hawthorn becomes softer and more palatable to birds. So I was seeing lots of robins eating the black hawthorn fruit in January. And by the time I came back to the coast in mid-January, most of the black hawthorns were gone. But it seemed as though the birds waited all through the fall and only chose to eat them after Christmas and into January. Beaked hazelnuts are another thing which I have never found on the Sunshine Coast, and yet it's common in Stanley Park and in the Fraser Valley, southern Vancouver Island. I used to have a software job in Burnaby and would sometimes go to Central Park in Burnaby for lunch. And there were a lot of these beaked hazelnuts there under these enormous Douglas firs. And when the hazelnuts ripen in September, the park would be full of Steller's jays and Douglas squirrels climbing all over the shrubs to get at the nuts, and the Steller's jays would fight over the nuts. And you can see they are very similar to the European hazelnut, except for this long beak on them. And the nut is not quite as large as the domestic hazelnut, but there's a lot of food value in one of those. So again, I took this photograph in Victoria, where Gary oaks are still fairly common in some areas. In a lot of areas, they have been wiped out on Vancouver Island, but there are some areas where there's still lots. And every few years, they have what they call a mast year, where the trees are just loaded down with acorns, and all sorts of birds and small mammals go crazy for them. The botanical garden has some Gary oaks, but they're not old enough to produce acorns yet. But you may know that the property was a tree farm at one time and has a lot of mature red oaks and pin oaks. And in September, those trees produce a lot of acorns, and we always know they're ready because Steller's jays arrive en masse and pick the acorns off the trees, and we see them flying this way and that way, and they're looking for holes in the trees, mostly pine trees and other trees that woodpeckers have made holes in, and they stick the acorns in the holes. Or if we have wood chip piles or piles of dirt, the jays will take the acorns and stick them in the piles of wood chips, and they don't always remember where they put them. So the following spring, we always get a lot of oak seedlings popping up here and there. But each acorn represents a huge number of calories. There's just so much food value in one acorn. So if you're lucky enough to have an arbutus on your property, you should be very thankful, because this is possibly the best wildlife tree that you could hope for. A healthy arbutus in spring is covered with masses of these nectar producing flowers that attract hummingbirds and all sorts of pollinating insects. And then in the fall, you'll get masses of these red fruit, which attract all sorts of birds. So a lot of people have sunny spots in their garden, and should be thinking about including some of these native shrubs in them. There's one spot in the native plant garden where I decided to put this trio together, which all bloom at the same time. And I think it's a real showstopper when they are in bloom. There's a couple of red flowering currants there. There's an Oregon grape and Saskatoon berry in the background. So most of you are probably familiar with tall Oregon grape. It does grow along the beaches here on the Sunshine Coast. A few places, maybe up near Pender Harbor, where it can get some sun in an open forest or in a rocky place. It's much more common in the Okanagan and the Kootenays, where it likes the dry weather and full sun. Anyway, it has very fragrant flowers, which attract all sorts of insects, and then loaded with these blueberries later in the summer. A lot of people don't, even people who move here from the prairies don't realize that Saskatoon grows here as well. The photo on the bottom left was taken at Sargent Bay. You'll probably recognize the Trail Islands in the background there. It's in bloom for about 2 weeks in the spring, and it is beautiful. The photo with the berries on, I took on Middle Natch Island, where for some reason there aren't birds. There just aren't songbirds on the island. The whole island seems to be occupied by seabirds, and there's nothing there to eat the Saskatoon. So the bushes just remain covered with them. Anyway, if you have a Saskatoon berry bush, you probably won't get to taste them yourself, because birds start eating them like the week before they're actually ripe. So I have one in my garden here and never been able to actually taste one myself. So red flowering currant is a plant which you'll find easily at any nursery. I think the one on the left is a cultivar called King Edward VII. So this is a shrub that was taken to England, and they liked it so much they started breeding it a bit, and they came up with this quite dark pink cultivar, and then they sent it back to us. But if you go walking under the power lines anywhere on the coast in April, late March, early April, you'll see flowering currants, and you'll hear the hummingbirds buzzing around them. They are also really useful to the first queen bumblebees that emerge in the spring, because the queens are very hungry, and they're quite happy to find an early blooming shrub. Indian plum is another of these oddities that is common on the North Shore, and I found it growing around Squamish, but I've never found it growing on the Sunshine Coast, which is weird. I see Tony shaking his head. It's just a weird thing. So I have planted many examples of this at the botanical garden, and I'm hoping that the robins will spread it around a bit. It's a really beautiful shrub. It blooms very early, and it produces these I would say little plums that are about, I don't know, maybe a quarter the size of an Italian plum. They sort of taste like cucumber in an odd way, but birds absolutely love them. Red stem dogwood, you may be familiar with. Its flowers are actually like clusters of dogwood tree flowers, and those become sort of porcelain white berries in the summer. And they're one of the shrubs that I would recommend you plant a few of to create a thicket, because so many songbirds like to take refuge in thickets. I think when they are hiding from hawks or whatever. So when you're planning your garden, think about including a thicket or a hedgerow, a variety of different deciduous shrubs that birds can fly into quickly when they are threatened by a hawk or some other predator. Nootka rose, everybody's familiar with that from usually along the shoreline here. The rose hips are quite hard, and they're another one of these things that seems to need the winter rain and cold to soften them up before the birds eat them. Ocean spray attract all sorts of small insects, and then of course those insects attract birds. So you'll sometimes see hummingbirds that aren't necessarily feeding on the ocean spray, but they're feeding on the insects that were attracted by the ocean spray. And I haven't got a picture of it, but those white flowers become sort of brown clusters of little husks, and those husks contain small seeds. And I was in the park at Mission Point a couple of falls ago, and just walking along with a friend, and all of a sudden a little flock of kinglets arrived, flew into this ocean spray bush, and were eating the tiny seeds out of these clusters of formerly flowers. We were just a couple of feet from them, and they were just going at it, and they were there for maybe 3 minutes, and then they all flew away again. I had never experienced anything like that. I had no idea that anything would be interested in such small seeds, but these kinglets certainly were. So some shrubs for light shade. Everybody, especially people with kids, know red huckleberries on the coast. Kids love red huckleberries. And salal, they seem to go together. Both of those are very shade tolerant, but unless they receive a certain amount of sunlight, they won't produce flowers and they won't produce fruit. So if you do have some huckleberries on your property that are maybe too deep shade, you might think about limbing up the trees that are shading them. And I guarantee that immediately you'll see a big difference in the number of fruit that they're producing. Huckleberries are one of the first berries to ripen here, and birds go crazy for them. Evergreen huckleberry is, I've found it in all parts of the Sunshine Coast, but it's never common anywhere. Strangely, it's very common on Texada Island. It's almost more common than salal. It's weird. It's an attractive evergreen shrub that you could make a hedge of if you wanted. It has your typical white sort of heather-like flowers in the spring, and then produces black or purple or blue berries that hang on until Christmas even. This was a photo my friend Patty Wales took at the Botanical Garden, looking through some evergreen huckleberries at a couple of black bear cubs, and they were munching away at the berries on the evergreen huckleberry there. Low Oregon grape is, I mean, people in a lot of the world would love to have a native shrub like this. It's beautiful evergreen, shiny leaves that turn sort of purplish in the fall. Long spikes of fragrant yellow flowers, and then these sort of bluey purple flowers or berries that all sorts of birds eat. Salmonberry. I know a lot of people probably hack away at the salmonberries on their property, but it really is a useful shrub. The photo shows a double-flowered salmonberry, which has been found in two places. Once by a hiker in the North Shore Mountains, and once by someone on the Olympic Peninsula. I'm not sure which this is. This is a genetic mutation that I don't think hummingbirds would like because it has all these petals, but it does produce regular looking fruit. Thimbleberries have actually large white flowers and then very soft, tasty fruit. And both of these are favorites of birds. So these are two sort of vining honeysuckles that are fairly common on the coast. Orange honeysuckle goes way up into the trees. You'll sometimes just see the twining stem of it going up. Sometimes the flowers are too high up to see them, but hummingbirds absolutely love these sort of orange tubular flowers like this. Hairy honeysuckle is common in Pender Bay area and on some of the offshore islands. A few other places, it's more of a rambler than a vine, I would say. And both of them have produced berries, which the birds like. Okay, so Lexi, are you there? Here's our first poll question.
Okay, can you see it?
What is our third native honeysuckle species, Lonicera, on the Sunshine Coast? The scientific name for most honeysuckles is Lonicera. So I've shown you two honeysuckles. What's the third?
We definitely have a fan favorite so far, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, so Lexi was bugging me that I haven't provided enough hints. So
No, that's the next question.
was it the next question? Okay.
The next question is really hard, so y'all need to, get in on this one while you can.
Okay, well, for this one, I was thinking about how the Natural History Society looks after the seashell marsh.
Oh, there you go. Now I know what it is. Anybody else want to guess?
So that is a big hint. If you've ever been to the seashell marsh, you should know what this is.
Okay, so I'm ending the poll now and sharing the results. And we've got a tie.
We do.
We've got a tie. So what is it, Harry?
Okay, okay, it is black twinberry.
Black twinberry. Okay, cool. I'm going to stop sharing and make the poll go away.
Sometimes called twinberry honeysuckle, but the most common name is black twinberry. Okay. Oh, there we go. Right. So if you ever walk through the, I can still see the poll. If you ever walk through the seashell marsh in April, May, maybe even early June, you will hear hummingbirds buzzing everywhere, and they are going after this shrub, honeysuckle.
Yeah, just Harry, can you still see the poll?
I still can, yeah.
Tony, can you give me a thumbs up, thumbs down? Can you see the poll? Okay, you guys can. Okay, Harry, just X out in the top left.
Oops.
Of the poll.
Exit out.
Just the little red button in the top left there.
Oh boy. Can't. No.
Can you move it off the screen so you can't see it?
No, if I click anything, it goes to the next slide.
So you can't see the red button in the top left?
I can, but I don't really have a cursor. Oh, there it goes. Oh, I can still see it though.
Yeah, so now try and hit that red X.
No, it's still there.
So click on just the poll anywhere within the poll, just to let your computer know that's what you're speaking to, and then try and hit that red X.
Darn, no.
I'm hoping that it's not like right in the middle of your view.
It is. Oh, well. You don't see it?
No, it doesn't. Nobody else is seeing it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just have to continue with it. I sort of know what the slides are. Anyway, so
if you share your screen again, then we'll be able to see it.
Okay. So anyway, it's very common in the seashell marsh. So, right. So Mother Nature, in her wisdom, has created all these different native berries that ripen in succession, starting
We,
this,
we need you to share your screen, Harry.
pardon me?
We need you to share your screen again. When we were trying to get rid of the poll, you stopped sharing.
Oh, gee.
I know. Technology, what you gonna do?
Okay.
We knew something would come up.
I'm sorry, Alexi, but I don't have a cursor to get rid of that. Oh, here we are. Okay, that is gone.
Cool. And then you can see where you can see me, and then down at the bottom of that is share screen. Perfect, we got it again.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that.
That's no problem. These things come up
Okay,
every meeting.
here we are. Black twinberry. Okay. Now, so native berries ripen in succession to make sure that birds always have something to eat. And of course, even birds that eat some insects, I don't think there are any birds that only eat berries, but there are always some berries available to birds from late spring through till early spring the following year. So red huckleberries are probably the first berries to ripen in June, I would say. Salmon berries and Indian plum are about the same time. And then all these berries ripen through summer into the fall. Some fruit like Pacific crabapple, black hawthorn, Nootka rose are ripe in the fall, but I think they're not very palatable to birds at that time, and they often have to be softened by the frost or the rain, and then they become soft enough for birds to eat in the winter or the following spring. So snowberries, you've probably seen these in the winter, and it's amazing how they hang on the shrub all winter. Well, the birds are just waiting for them to soften to eat. Anyway, we're going to talk a bit about wildflowers now. And this is a little video clip I took in Uplands Park in Victoria, where there are carpets of camas in the spring. It's just incredible. And each one of these flowers is produced by an underground bulb, which before European settlement was a food staple for Coast Salish people in that area. And these flowers attract an unbelievable number of insects in the spring. So we have a small Garry Oak meadow at the Botanical Garden, and in the spring there are common camas in that meadow, which just provide a small glimpse of what a real Garry Oak meadow looks like. So we don't have common camas on the Sunshine Coast, but we do have great camas, which in some ways is even a nicer plant. It just doesn't grow in the same quantities that you see in a Garry Oak meadow. So I took these photos at my little secret place in West Seashelt, where they grow in on a rocky bluff. You can see the coastline there, and they attract all sorts of insects, and including crab spiders that go there to catch insects. Large leaf lupin is most people on Sunshine Coast know it from the ferry bypass, but it's common throughout BC, and it's a wonderful wildflower that you can include in your garden. Sneezeweed is a misnomer, but It does not make people sneeze, and it doesn't cause hay fever. But I like it so much, I've included a huge patch of it in the native plant garden, and it brings in honeybees from the other end of the property and all sorts of other native pollinators. And you can see in the bottom left a little tree frog that is sitting on the seed head looking for an insect. Yeah. Douglas aster is infrequent on the Sunshine Coast, but you might know it from Sargent Bay. There's a patch of it down below the fish ladder. And if you were going to include just one flowering perennial, native flowering perennial in your garden, I would say Douglas aster is the one. It has a long blooming period, and it attracts whole variety of pollinating insects. And birds eat the little seeds that are left. If you don't deadhead it, the birds will eat the seeds. So these are two other great wildlife or wildflower choices for your sunny garden. Yarrow, which is usually white when you find it in the wild here, but I have found pale pink versions of it around Point Daniel. And pearly everlasting, which you find everywhere, which is very popular with insects. Goldenrod is a great plant by any standards. It attracts many pollinators. If the regular species is a bit too tall for your garden, there's a shorter version called baby gold that you might choose. Fireweed, of course, is well known. Some people might think of it as weedy, but I think it's spectacular. And hummingbirds love it.
We've had a question come through that I also share the same question, so we're going to ask it now.
Sure.
Where can we get Douglas asters?
Well, there will be some in the plant sale at the Botanical Garden.
Nice plug.
I can't remember the date offhand, but is it usually around Mother's Day, or I can't remember when it is this year.
First weekend in May, but
okay.
The website will say.
Yeah, I will make sure there is some available.
There you go.
Okay, so this is part of the wildflower patch, which it looks like this in August and through September. So some smaller native plants to include in your garden are broadleaf stonecrop, slimleaf onion, and nodding onion. All great choices. And for damp places, Henderson's checker mallow and Alaska burnet. For the shade, Western trillium and bleeding heart are really choice native plants. Unfortunately, trillium is munched by deer. I have had that problem, and I'm going to have to protect mine with a cage or something this year. Okay, here we have another question. Shall I just read it?
You can just read it. Why don't you do
Yeah,
that?
wouldn't this be easier?
A poll on your.
Yeah.
This is the one that I thought was hard.
Yeah, this one's a bit hard. Which native wildflower has a common name that references one kind of bird and a scientific name that references a different kind of bird?
And I think this is going to be all of our favorite trivia question going forward. So you can unmute yourself if you've got a guess at this, or you can pop it into the chat as well.
So it would help if you know a little bit about wildflowers, of course, but also if you know a little Latin.
All right, Andrew, you unmuted yourself. What's your guess?
Oh, I'm not ready for that stage yet.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm gonna hide myself.
Hi, Andrew. Hi. Right. So.
I told you it was hard.
Yeah, it is. I guess it is. But I thought it was great.
Sheila's unmuted herself. She's got a guess.
Okay. No, Yeah, have you told us about it already, or is this, have we seen this plant already, or is this,
It's the next slide. You haven't seen it yet.
Such a meanie. Grace, you've got to.
I know, I'm a
Yes.
meanie.
Yeah, is it cardinal flower?
Oh, that's very good, but no.
Oh, so close.
That's an Eastern Canadian flower, so I didn't think it was right.
It is Eastern, yeah.
Put us out of our misery. Let us know what our favorite trivia question.
Okay. So it's Columbine. No, go to it. So Columbine references dove, columba, and the scientific name Aquilegia references eagle.
And we all feel so stupid for not having that.
So yeah, apparently eagle in Latin is aquila, and of course dove in Latin is columba. So I thought that was interesting, a flower that references two birds. Anyway, this is a really popular bird with hummingbirds, and in fact, you can see. Oh, so the dove reference is that it's supposed to look like 5 doves taking a drink together. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then the eagle reference is that it looks like an eagle foot with the 5 claws, talons up. Can you see that? Okay. Anyway, that's the reference there. So the hummingbird bill, the flower is made for the hummingbird bill to go right up that little tube, and the little bulb at the end of that is full of nectar. So the hummingbird goes under it and up, puts his bill up through the tube and sucks the nectar from that little ball. It's great to watch. So just a few native ground covers. Bunchberry grows really well in sort of duff in the forest. If you have a bark mulch or that sort of thing, great to plant it in that. Beautiful flowers, and then berries that are eaten by birds that sort of hop along the soil, or by squirrels or mice. Ooh. Now, why am I not going forward here?
Don't know.
Oh,
There we
go. Okay. Twin flower, another sweet little flower for shade. Wild strawberry. There are 2 native strawberries on the coast, and they will take a little bit of shade, but most won't produce many fruit. But in the sun, they will produce small fruit. Great ground cover. Kinnikinnick, of course, is common along the coastal bluffs on the Sunshine Coast. Strangely, it's some people chose to name a park in Seychelles Kinnikinnick Park, but there's no Kinnikinnick in the park. Sunflowers. Okay, if you were going to just take one thing from this talk, I would say plant sunflowers. You may not realize it, but the annual sunflowers are native to BC, and the photo on the left was taken in Merritt, and that's what a wild sunflower looked like before hybridizers got a hold of them and created all sorts of varieties from them. So we grow many sunflowers in the vegetable garden at the botanical garden to attract insects, to pollinate the squash and the other vegetables. And this form on the right is the one that I like. It gets about 7 or sometimes 8 feet tall and has many flower heads on it. And they attract so many honeybees, bumblebees, all sorts of pollinating insects. And then when they go to seed, it attracts chickadees, obviously juncos, Steller's jays, all kinds of birds. So they are absolutely the best single plant you could put in your sunny flower bed. Absolutely. And these days they come in all sizes from, 2 feet tall to 10 feet tall. And West Coast Seeds, for example, has many, many varieties for sale. I would say plant any of them except the pollenless sunflowers. For some reason, somebody thought it would be a good idea to create a pollenless sunflower that didn't drop pollen on your table. But of course, they're useless for wildlife. Anyway, little section here on hummingbirds because I think they're just about everybody's favorite bird. Rufous hummingbirds arrive when salmonberry and red flowering currant shrubs start blooming. In fact, I think they follow these shrubs from California going up the coast as the salmonberry and the currant shrubs are blooming. These are, if you're in particularly interested in attracting hummingbirds, these are all native plants that you would want to include in your garden. There are many more that hummingbirds here are attracted to, but these are ones that I have seen hummingbirds on. So I wanted to include some non-native plants for hummingbirds because a lot of people like to watch hummingbirds from their decks. And I think if you include some of these non-native plants, you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of watching the hummingbirds claim them and then try to scare off competitors. Anyway, Crocosmia lucifer is a plant that hummingbirds will claim as soon as they start to bloom and will fight over. These two plants, Crocosmia and red hot poker, are both native to South Africa, excuse me, where birds called sunbirds almost have like a parallel evolutionary path to hummingbirds. They have long bills and they seem to like tubular, bright flowers, which of course hummingbirds also like. So red hot poker, if you've seen this growing in anybody's garden, you've seen hummingbirds around it. So somebody mentioned cardinal flower. So these are two eastern wildflowers, cardinal flower and bee balm, and they are both really popular with, of course, ruby-throated hummingbirds in the east. And if you plant them in your garden here, the rufous hummingbirds and Anna hummingbirds will also love them. The cardinal flower is just the classic hummingbird flower. I think it is only pollinated by hummingbirds. So these two plants are hardy fuchsia is native to southern Chile, southern Patagonia. So very similar climate to ours here on the BC coast. It has a long blooming period. And of course they have hummingbirds down there as well. And our hummingbirds absolutely love this plant. Scarlet runner beans are native to Central America, I think. And of course that's like the epicenter of hummingbirds. And our hummingbirds really go for those too. So Anna's hummingbirds are, if you do any research on this bird, you will be amazed. They originally had a range limited to Southern California, like about the bottom third of California and a little bit into Baja California in Mexico. And sometime mid last century, their range just exploded. And it seems to have been due to the fact that they discovered people's gardens, and people were including more and more winter blooming plants in them in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and up into BC. And their range just went further and further north until now. I believe that they have been seen in Alaska in the summer. They don't overwinter in Alaska, but they have made it that far north. And one of the plants that is their absolute favorite is this Chinese relative of our Oregon grape. And it is actually a hybrid between a subtropical sort of Oregon grape and a more hardy Oregon grape that was hybridized. And it blooms from, there are different varieties of it, but you can find them blooming from mid-December until I would say mid-March even. And when I would walk around Victoria, these shrubs were planted everywhere, and there were Anna's hummingbirds going crazy for that. You just hear the hummingbirds all the time when you're walking through these neighborhoods. It's incredible. So there, if you go to the nursery, probably the one you would want, the variety you would want is called Winter Sun. It gets about 8 feet tall, maybe 6 feet wide. There's a variety called Charity, which will get about 12 feet high if you let it grow, and not quite as wide. But if you want to attract Ines hummingbirds, plant one of these and they will come. It's amazing. Witch hazel is another winter blooming shrub that attracts hummingbirds. It is most witch hazels are from China and Japan. Grevillea is from Australia. There must be birds in Australia with similar beaks to hummingbirds. There are two kinds of Grevillea which will make it through most of our winters. My friend Bill Terry used to have a couple of them planted at his place on the waterfront in Seashell, and Anna's hummingbirds were hitting them all December, January, February. Incredible. Okay, next question, the poll question.
I'm going to skip launching the poll just because I don't want to leave
Sure,
that
yeah,
lingering thing. So if people want
good
to
idea.
or unmute themselves,
So,
go ahead and guess it.
yeah, okay. So as I mentioned, Anna's hummingbirds have extended their range incredibly from the bottom third of California east into Arizona, New Mexico, and all the way up the coast, so that they're now resident all year on the southwest coast of BC. So what decade do you think they extended their range into BC? Any guesses?
Sheila, what's your guess?
1970s.
1970s. Tony, you're unmuted. What's your guess?
1950s.
1950s. Andrew.
1990s.
1990. None of you agree. Come on. George, what's your guess?
1970s.
1970. We've got two for the 1970s now.
I'm going to vote for 1970s.
Okay, 1970s is the fan favorite. Anybody else?
1950.
1950s. Okay.
Okay.
1950.
No, more than 1950s.
Oh, more 1950s. Okay. Well,
Out of our misery.
most of what I read was that the 1970s. They and then I read something that in in 68 or 69 they were seen one summer in Victoria, and I guess they liked it, so then they came up seriously in the 1970s, but really arrived en masse in the 1990s is what I read.
Can I just add to that?
Yes.
So they did arrive in Victoria in the 1950s.
That early?
And the first record on the Sunshine Coast was in 1971 or 2.
Wow.
But they did become very, very common in the 90s in Vancouver. I mean, just a population explosion.
Right. So that it sounds like they arrived as summer visitors first, and then they gradually became full-time residents later. Is it,
I-
it seems
No,
that
there's-
they are nesting now as far as Alaska, but they don't overwinter in Alaska or northern BC.
Yeah, they are in Alaska now, but they're also showing up in the Okanagan, and they're showing up in Prince George, and basically
Wow.
all over the place.
Wow. So it's an incredible story. Really, yeah. Anyway, I found this map, which shows where they are common now all seasons. So that's sort of basically where we are. We're in the all seasons common now. And then, yeah. So this map doesn't show them going as far east as the Okanagan or Prince George, but
They're still rare in those places.
okay. But anyway, it's an incredible range expansion. So anyway, there we go. So I just wanted to cover a few best gardening practices. And first one, of course, no pesticides. You know, I know it's sort of counterintuitive for gardeners, but we want insects for the birds to eat themselves. And then, of course, birds feed their young almost exclusively on insects. So they absolutely have to have insects and spiders. Of course, hummingbirds eat a lot of spiders. So when you're out walking the garden in the morning, don't wreck those spider webs, leave the spiders. Reduce the size of your lawn. Lawns are basically ecological deserts. In the fall, don't rake up your leaves and send them to sailor soils. Just push them off to the side and use them as a mulch under your shrubs. And I guarantee over the winter, you'll see varied thrushes come through and flip them over this way and that way and pull out the worms and grubs and everything. They love to do that. And be a little bit messy. Leave some of the seed heads on your wildflowers because birds love to pick at those over the winter. Leave some rotting wood for insects to eat and for woodpeckers to come and tear apart looking for insects. It's amazing how much birds love brush piles. I'll do a whole lot of pruning at the garden, pile up my prunings, come back an hour later, and it's full of birds. It's it's incredible. And leave some rough edges where ground nesting birds can. This is a towhee. We had some elementary school students come and help us for a couple of hours cleaning up blackberry, and one student fortunately didn't step on it. It came across this towhee on the ground, and then we realized that it was actually on its nest, and so the kids put a little teepee over it to protect the nest. If you have a tree on your property that you need to take down, why not leave part of it to become a wildlife tree? And I guarantee that insects will find it, and then the woodpeckers will find it. So this photo on the left was taken at the Horticultural Center of the Pacific in Victoria, and that tree had been gone over by all sorts of pileated woodpeckers and other woodpeckers. The one in the center is at the Maplewood Bird Sanctuary, and there's a nest box there, and that you can see that they've put metal around it, I think as a squirrel guard or a rat guard or something. If you have a stump on your property, plant some red huckleberry in it and maybe some salal and a fern. Great for wildlife. If it's at all possible, include a water feature like a little bird bath or a fountain. And if you do have one of those, you might want to think of putting a rock like this in, where there are different levels, because birds like shallow water. Also, butterflies and insects like to land on a rock and take a drink. And of course, if you have a pond, don't put koi in it. Because if you have goldfish or koi, you won't have tadpoles. And we need more frogs. Anyway, this is my section on invasive plants to avoid. So I think most people have heard of the British invasion in the 1960s that was led by the beetles and the animals, and most appropriate to us, the yardbirds. So that was a great time. But now we're undergoing on the Sunshine Coast the English invasion. English holly, English laurel, English ivy. And of course, this English invasion is led by the hollies. During COVID, I've been doing long walks around Roberts Creek, and it's very disheartening to see the amount of English ivy that is taking up our forests, and the number of English laurels that are popping up far away from residential areas. And holly, if you didn't know better, you think it was a native plant. It's become so common, and these really have no wildlife value at all, but they are taking up a lot of real estate. So, and what's worse, they're all still sold at nurseries, and people buy them and plant them, and then they spread and spread and spread. So your last meeting, we were talking about New Zealand and how New Zealand is suffering from invasive plants. Well, this is what's, I'm picking on the English here. There are, Japanese knotweed, and there's so many other plants that are a problem here, but they're not sold in nurseries. These three are sold in nurseries. So please try to avoid these. If you really need to plant like a laurel hedge, please plant Portuguese laurel instead of English laurel. It doesn't seem to invade our forests the same way. So anyway, that's my rant. Yeah, I'm a mandolin player, and one of the best mandolin players in the world is John Reichman, who was originally American but now lives in New Westminster. And his group, the Jaybirds, come and sing in Gibson's every couple of years, and I absolutely love them. So instead of the hollies, I listen to the Jaybirds. Anyway, I'd like to extend an invitation to you, if you haven't come to the Botanical Garden, to come for a walk, especially during COVID. It's great to have a nice quiet place to come and enjoy nature. And this is one of the areas that I work in, called the Rainforest Grove. I've tried to create an environment that people can look at and appreciate, and maybe go home with a few ideas for their own garden. We get all kinds of birds. These are two barn swallow chicks that were, I just happened to be walking by when the parents had coaxed them out of their little mud nest onto the top of this gate, and a few minutes later they were gone. We get lots of herons eating our frogs. We get too many deer causing problems in my garden. I don't mind them munching on things, but unfortunately the males rub their antlers and debark a lot of my trees. Anyway, we get alligator lizards and lots of garter snakes. We have elementary students come and dip nets in the pond and come up with all sorts of weird and wonderful creatures like these. I think that's a red-legged frog tadpole and salamander tadpole. And if you go to the garden this weekend, you will see the first frog egg masses of the season. They were laid a couple of days ago. So go to the sunny pond and cross the bridge and look down, and you will see lots and lots of frog egg masses. So, oh, and yeah, these are 3 pictures I took of last summer at the same pond. Was a female rufous hummingbird collecting fluff from last year's cattails. So that was a real thrill. Anyway, so if you'd like,
Harry, sorry to
oh
interrupt.
yes,
The question is, what's the best way to attract frogs? And I would say it sounds like ponds without fish in them, eh?
absolutely. You cannot have goldfish or anything. They will eat the eggs probably before they even become tadpoles, and they will certainly eat the tadpoles. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, that large a pond. It's amazing. You just have to keep water in it, through until about July, when the little tadpoles all grow legs and hop away. Yeah. So anyway, these are some of the reference books that I've really found useful over the years. The first one, Landscaping for Wildlife, was written by, I believe he's a wildlife officer in Western Washington. And he goes into great detail about which plants attract which birds. He goes into details about dimensions of nesting boxes and, all sorts of little home projects that you can do to attract birds and mammals. The last book, Plants of Coastal British Columbia, is a book that everybody should have in their house. There's so much information in that book. It's wonderful. It's my Bible. Okay, are there any questions?
Yeah, that's great. So if anybody has questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask them or pop them in the chat. That was really, really great, Harry. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Harry,
I have a comment or question. I had a lot of trouble actually finding native plants that I wanted to plant in the backyard here. At garden centers just seem to look at me kind of blindly or whatever. Is there any place that I could actually source some of these plants?
Well, I would really recommend Sunshine Coast Nursery in Roberts Creek on the highway.
Okay.
They always have a native plant section. And if you contact her in the spring, Cheryl Topping will, she always places orders with native plant growers, and she will bring in the things you request.
Okay, that's great. Appreciate it.
Say, Harry, are the botanical garden hours going to expand sometime soon?
Right now, I believe she's open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, by Poja and Maggie.
Is it 10 until 4? So those are the winter hours, and the spring hours, I'm sorry, I'm not sure when they start, but they would include Tuesday and Thursday. So I think the garden would only be closed on Wednesday at that time. But anyway, it's open this weekend.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Harry,
Yes, Tony.
maybe you can, I was thinking of Bill Terry's book on native gardens too. Maybe you know the name of it. I can't remember the name. I just took a quick look for it, but.
Okay. Shoot. you know, I've got it in another room. I don't want to run and get
Yeah,
it.
me
I,
too.
I could let Lexi know. Yeah. Yeah, I like that book where he talks about yeah, putting together plants that sort of play together well and making your life easy by having a low maintenance garden.
If you think of it, Harry, after this, just shoot me
Okay.
an email and I can get it in the next newsletter.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Any other questions before we let Harry go?
Just a couple of comments. It's really interesting, Harry. You know, you pinpointed some of the plants that we think maybe should occur on the Sunshine Coast, but
Yes.
do not. You know, things.
Tony, did you get the name of the book? It's called Beauty by Design.
Oh, that's lovely, Thomas. Thank you so much. Beauty
That sounds
by
right.
Design.
Have it here if you.
And Tony, I don't know for all of you, but he seems to have frozen on this end.
Yes.
Okay.
But one comment we got from Rand was that there is a nice vine maple near the north end of Mercer Road, north side. So if you're looking for vine maple on the coast, make a note, Harry. Oh, he's actively making a note.
Whoa.
Yeah, if you can't find it, Harry, I can show you where it is.
There's also a vine maple at the end of my driveway, up at the top of Pebble Crescent in Seashell, just off trail.
We're gonna
You're
have to
just
start
welcome to drive up there.
some sort of a vine maple map. We've got another question that's come through in the chat. It says, what do you think about planting Indian plum here when it's not found here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not enough.
maybe it's unethical, but I think it should be here. And I think with climate change, it makes sense to, I mean, if it's growing in Squamish, it should be here. That's sort of how I feel.
So this was Harry's specific list of native plants.
Just a note. Hi, Harry.
Bye.
Great information. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a challenging area at the back of the property that's dry, semi-shade under the cedars. And I just wanted to say I've had really good success with not only white flowering currant, but also the snowberries and the hummingbirds. I was amazed to realize that the tiny, tiny flowers on the snowberries, the hummingbirds were all over it.
Yes.
In the late spring. So
yeah.
The white flowering currants, white icicles, it's called.
Yes.
Is an outstanding plant. I'm so happy with it. It's really spectacular. Doesn't get berries at all, but in the dark, shady areas under the trees, it's quite lovely.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. You're talking about hummingbirds on the little snowberry flowers, because
Tiny, yeah.
Snowberry is actually related to honeysuckle.
Yes.
You wouldn't, you might not think so to look at the two, but if you look at the snowberry flowers, they do look like little honeysuckle flowers.
Exactly. They're little tiny, tiny tubular.
Yeah.
Great fast growing screening plant. If anybody's looking for a native that they want to just use as a screening hedgy type thing, it's kind of loose on the edges, but it's been really great. Yeah.
So yeah, speaking of snowberries, I noticed in Victoria that the snowberries at the end of winter get all kind of mushy and go brown, and that's when the birds eat them.
Yeah.
It's like their last food of choice, and yet having it there means that the birds never go hungry. If you
Maybe it's fermented.
That could be.
It's a new distillery on the coast.
Yeah.
Well, we're curious. We've just at the back of our property, we've just had the native trees cut down, and somebody's moved in back there. We just have an old chain link fence there, and I'm wondering about. But on our side of the property, we have a mixed conifer forest, but it's only about 40 feet through. So I'm wondering about other screening plants that we could actually put in under the, along the fence and underneath the conifers.
Screening plants. So how tall would you want them to be?
6 feet.
6 feet or so.
Okay. Well, if there's quite a lot of sun, Oregon grape would suit the bill, and it is evergreen, so it would give you some some privacy all year, and you could mix that with red flowering currant. Yeah, it would be nice if you could make a hedgerow of different species actually in front of the. And if you were able, maybe you could plant honeysuckle in the chain link fence. Would that be possible?
Well, it's because there's the evergreens that are fairly tall there, the conifers. It's got a fair bit of shade.
Oh, okay. The evergreen huckleberry would tolerate that shade, and it can certainly get 6, even 8 feet tall in the shade.
And the vine maples, Harry?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would the maple grow when there's already conifers above it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If you well, even just driving, well, you shouldn't be looking into Stanley Park when you're driving through, but if you're on the bus going through the Stanley Park, you will see vine maples growing in pretty deep shade in Stanley Park under big Douglas firs and cedars.
So Harry, are you counseling me to go on and rip off the plant in Stanley Park?
No, I'm counseling you to look at nature as a guide. Don't go and dig out those. You'll end up in jail.
I've also used the Lonicera, the evergreen Lonicera. It's related to the native flowering one.
Yep.
The evergreen one that they use in the landscaping a lot.
Yep.
I've used it in the shade under the cedars, but I've supported it so that it grows more vertically. And instead of, it's kind of a cane growing arching effect if it's naturally growing, but I've pulled it back and supported it. So it's growing about 8 to 9 feet tall right now.
That'd be good. Yeah, I think 9 feet's good. Thank you all.
Okay, good.
Well, that's great, Harry. Thank you so much for your knowledge and your beautiful photographs as well. Those are great.
Okay.
We really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
To kill
Thanks.
the English.
Thanks, Harry.
English holly.